What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of ShowMeFootball.com, and this is being recorded late at night, Sunday night, after the Chiefs' 30-24 loss against the Los Angeles Chargers. And obviously, I've done my post-game shows. I did one with Connor on my channel where we kind of had our reactionary bit, and then I went on with Kingdom Crew with Michael Darcy and Lucas Murphy of the Beat of KC on Michael's channel. You can watch that as well. And it was just kind of us just projecting our feelings everywhere and just still being upset about the game and everything. But I wanted to make just kind of a breakdown / rant sort of video now that I've had more time to soak in what just happened today. And unfortunately, a lot of what you're about to hear from me is the same stuff I've been harping on for weeks, months, stuff that I preach should be addressed during the off season, and stuff that I complained about over the last couple games, and it came back to bite us yet again today. Now, before I start, if you did listen to some of those post-game shows I did, it's going to be a lot of the same stuff, but I just wanted to have a one-on-one with me and you, the listeners, giving you everything that I feel and all the concerns that I have with this Chiefs team currently. I think the first thing that really stands out to me from today's Chiefs loss is other teams are starting to catch up with the Chiefs. As much as people do not want to admit it, as much as people want to act like the Chiefs are just head and shoulders above everyone else because they have Patrick Mahomes and he's the greatest in the world, even though they should be, that just really isn't the case anymore. Because the fact of the matter is the roster around Patrick Mahomes and a handful of players is quite mediocre. And a lot of this goes on Brett Veach and his roster building strategy. It's come back to hurt the team. I went over this many times, and Lucas Murphy from the Beat of KC, a good friend of mine, he even brought it up on his channel and in our post-game show earlier today. Go back and look at Brett Veach's moves in free agency, in the draft, and his trades, and most of it is very underwhelming. I mean, I don't have to explain any further that the Frank Clark trade was a horrible move in retrospect, right? His free agency signings are a lot of players that either were overpaid or he just missed on. And my guy at Solely Chiefs on Twitter really said it best. I'm going to quote his tweet here from earlier today. Trading up for Breeland Speaks, drafting Hardman over McLaurin and DK, drafting Clyde, drafting Willie Gay, trading multiple picks to pay Frank Clark top 5 QB money, drafting a linebacker who can't move in space at 58, not addressing Ben Neiman and Dan Sorensen, paying Hitchens 5 years, $45 million. It all catches up. And that couldn't be more true. Eventually, the bad moves and not being able to address spots on the roster that obviously needed to be fixed is going to catch up. Once again, what are some of the biggest needs we said were on this Chiefs team when they went into the offseason? Offensive line was the biggest one by far, right? But after that, wide receiver 2, defensive end, defensive back depth. How many of those are still in need? I would say defensive back, Sorensen and Charvarius Ward are still out there playing a bunch of the snaps. Ward was injured and actually didn't play in this game, but I thought DeAndre Baker looked pretty good, so I don't think Ward should just be given his spot back once he's healthy again. They still refuse to play Thornhill over Sorensen. Wide receiver 2, you saw the secondary pass catchers not named Tyreek Hill and not named Travis Kelce struggle today because the reality is Tyreek Hill was held in check today. He had a pedestrian day, only about 5 receptions for 50 yards, right? Travis Kelce, he still had 100 yards on the day, but the Chargers were really focused on him and they didn't let him kill them. Like, yes, he still had his plays, but, he wasn't really a game breaker. And every time he caught the ball, there were 3 Chargers defenders there ready to wallop him. So then there were times in the game that Byron Pringle and Marcus Kemp were getting thrown to, and they're dropping it. Byron Pringle had 2 crucial drops. Marcus Kemp was at fault for one of Mahomes' interceptions. I have no idea why Marcus Kemp is seeing the field for anything other than special teams. And then McCole Hardman didn't have a single touch that wasn't a handoff today, which really tells you how they feel about him as an actual receiver. And then my biggest concern, the thing that frustrates me the most, is this team cannot get pressure on the quarterback. And I'm telling you right now, the biggest problem with this team that no one talks about, that was the biggest reason outside the offensive line they didn't win the Super Bowl was they couldn't get pressure on the quarterback. And if the Chiefs still somehow make it to the Super Bowl this year, it's likely going to be the Rams or the Bucs or a team like that on the other side. And I'm telling you right now, the Chiefs are not going to win against either of those teams if they can't get pressure on the opposing team's quarterback. It's just not going to happen, especially when you have a secondary that is as weak as the Chiefs, or a defensive unit overall that's as weak as the Chiefs. Chris Jones is the only pass rushing threat, and he seems to be minimized as a defensive end. He should really be at D tackle still, which is where he's most disruptive. They signed Jarran Reed, moved him out to end, and it's not working well at all. You should have signed a defensive end. And again, I don't know how many times I've said this on my channel, guys. They should have gotten a defensive end. There were chances to get one. They didn't. They banked on healthy Frank Clark coming back, guys. Frank Clark's not doing anything. Just stop. Stop holding out hope for him. He's not coming back and being Seattle Seahawks Frank Clark. He can't even get on the field anymore. It truly is pathetic with how much they've invested in the defensive line. It really is. Ultimately, what all this leads to is my point that since the Chiefs have failed to effectively address most of these positions, other teams have caught up to them, and it now has gotten to the point where the Chiefs can no longer play like absolute shit for 3.5 quarters and still expect to win the game, because that's what they did today. That's what they did against the Baltimore Ravens, and look what happened. And it almost happened again against the Cleveland Browns. Those days are over, and it was already starting to become an issue last year, because in the last 7 games in 2020, the Chiefs won those games by a combined 27 points. And I was arguing with a couple people on Twitter this past week that the Chiefs are one of the worst teams in the league against the spread. And that is an indication that they play down to their competition and that usually they don't play a complete game. And people said that was crazy and I don't know what I'm talking about, and here we are today. I mean, think about how many games in the Chiefs' last 10, 12 games have come down to Patrick Mahomes having to pull a rabbit out of a hat or get a first down to ice the game because it was a really close game. And again, today, Mahomes, look, this game, he does not go without blame. He threw a horrible interception, and he's been playing off lately. But this team needs to find ways to win games outside of Patrick Mahomes. Other offensive players have to step up. The defense has to step up. And this is why I always hated the crowd that was always saying, oh, we have Patrick Mahomes, there's nothing to worry about, because Patrick Mahomes cannot mask every single deficiency every single game. You're relying on 3 players, let's be honest. Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Tyreek Hill to carry you every single game, and it's not sustainable football. I mean, the offense has to be better, and let's be real. 4 turnovers is inexcusable, and you're not going to win very many games when you turn the ball over 4 times. So a lot of people are going to say, if the Chiefs just clean up the turnover mistakes, they'll be just fine, and they really would have ran away with this game. But that's just assuming that the Chiefs are eventually going to clean up the turnover problem. They've turned the ball over 6 times now in 3 games. Yes, I am somewhat optimistic that they're going to be able to clean that up and they're not going to turn the ball over a few times every single game. I mean, I think this team is much better than that. But there's other reasons they lost as well. And I feel like a lot of it is because Patrick Mahomes doesn't really have a lot of trust in anyone that's not Travis Kelce or Tyreek Hill, and not having a secondary weapon is really hurting this team, because defenses are able to, they're not able to, at will, bottle up Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill, but when they're doing a decent job, it really gives this offense trouble, especially when they can't run the ball either. And that's another thing I want to talk about. Clyde Edwards-Helaire actually had a pretty good day running the ball, but he did fumble on a drive that likely would have resulted in a Chiefs touchdown. He turned the ball over again today. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, to me, has been totally unimpressive, and I know he had 100 yards rushing today. 17 carries for 100 yards, which is good for a 5.9 yards per carry. But that doesn't validate anything about Clyde for me. He should have had a 100-yard game in this game, because the Chargers are a bottom 3 run defense. They are right there with the Chiefs in rush defense. Clyde Edwards-Helaire's career so far, the highlights, his best games, are against bottom 5 rushing defenses. We need to see that more consistently against good opponents. And the thing that really pissed me off today was how Clyde still got to go on the field after his second fumble in 2 games when LaShawn McCoy was here. He did that same thing and got put in the doghouse. Yet Andy Reid still allowed Clyde to go out there on that field after pulling that, when really Jerick McKinnon or Darrell Williams should be getting the ball at this point. They just should. I know Clyde had a decent day rushing, but you're talking about a bottom 3 rush defense in the league that, I think they had better options. I've been saying for a while, I want to see Jerick McKinnon. The lack of Jerick McKinnon touches is infuriating. That dude is talented. Put him out on the field. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire should have been put in the doghouse for that. But the reason he's not is because they have so much invested in him that they don't want to admit failure. And that's really infuriating. Those are my main takeaways from the offense, but let's shift some focus to the defense, which also was not great today. They looked good for a couple drives early in the game, and look, the offense did them no favors because they kept them on the field a lot, but the defense still gave up over 350 yards of total offense. And it kind of seemed like a lot of the Chiefs' defenders became demoralized as the game carried on, and it really affected their performance. I already went over the defensive line and how they weren't able to get pressure today, but another problem with this team is pass coverage. Mike Williams and Keenan Allen really had their way against this team. Now, it's really difficult for this group of defensive backs that really aren't as big or as athletic as the Chargers receivers to go out and cover those guys for an entire game. But man, Mike Hughes was out there getting absolutely turned around by Mike Williams. And Mike Hughes has a good play every here or there, but he's really been pretty bad for the most part, in my opinion. And I never understood the hype with him because the Chiefs sold him to the fan base as a starter when he got here. And let's not forget that Mike Hughes was someone that the Minnesota Vikings were going to cut if we didn't trade for him. I mean, we traded a 6th-round pick for Mike Hughes. I just never really understood that. You're asking him to go out and cover Mike Williams, who, by the way, if you look at Mike Hughes versus Mike Williams when Mike Hughes was on the Vikings, Mike Williams absolutely abused him. That matchup was going to be exposed from the very start. And then Dan Sorensen. I mean, come on. Put Juan Thornhill in the freaking game. This is inexcusable by the coaching staff. I don't know what more we have to see. We've talked about that one before. Everyone has talked about it. It's been a hot topic of discussion lately. Juan Thornhill needs to be in the game, and he needs to be the deep safety. And I don't know what the heck is going on, but for some reason Sorensen is still out there. And the linebackers still look completely lost as well. Going back to the defensive line real quick, Jarran Reed too, that guy still did nothing today. That signing was hyped up, and I was really happy when it first happened, but Jesus, he couldn't have been worse so far. I thought DeAndre Baker looked pretty good, like I said earlier, but you're going to need more than that. I think this team looks like a team that doesn't invest highly in their corners. I really don't think Charvarius Ward would have made too much of a difference today. Charvarius Ward is allowing a 111.6 passer rating this year when targeted. You got to have better than that. This defense just looks bad, man. And the red zone defense is the worst part of it. They've allowed a touchdown on 11 red zone stands so far this year. They ended up holding the Chargers to a field goal after a couple penalties. They got real lucky, though. They held the Chargers to a field goal towards the end of the game. Then Mahomes turns the ball over, and the Chargers go back down for a touchdown. They win the game. Here's where I'm most frustrated, though. There was that point in the game where it was 4th and 4, and Brendan Staley and Justin Herbert decided to go for it with their offense. Then the Chargers get another penalty, and it gets backed up to 4th and 9. And the Chargers still decide to go for it on 4th and 9. And guess what? They convert. And to me, that's embarrassing that defense was so bad that the Chargers were confident enough to go for it on 4th and 9, and they got it. And I understand there was a defensive pass interference call on that play that was a little sketchy. Still, you just can't have that happen. The red zone defense is a huge issue, and I don't see it getting better, man. I don't know what has to change. This has been a trend for a very long time, and it's just something I think we're going to have to deal with. And then one more closing thought I have on the defense is, and this is a question for Steve Spagnuolo, Why the hell are there so many times in every game that this defense has Tyrann Mathieu and Nick Bolton and players pointing fingers and running around and never look set every time the ball is about to get snapped by the offense? Like, this defense, I guess, is just too complicated for these guys to pick up, because I've noticed that they are running around and not set all the way up until the ball is snapped every time. I mean, they're pointing fingers. They don't know where to be. They're constantly out of place. How many times have we seen Mike Williams or Keenan Allen or whoever wide open and there's just not a defender anywhere near them? Like, how many? That happens so much with the Chiefs, and I don't understand it. Like, what is Spags telling these guys to do? I understand Spags runs a complicated defense, but if your players show they're not capable of running a complicated defense, let's go back to the drawing board. Let's start with the basics, because these guys, they don't have the defense down. I mean, they are keeping guys wide open. The middle of the field is wide open for offensive players to take advantage of every time. The Chargers ran up-tempo because they knew the Chiefs couldn't get set. Dan Sorensen got caught lacking 2 plays in a row on a touchdown and then the 2-point conversion afterward. I just don't understand it. Something's got to give. This team has serious concerns going forward. To me, they don't look like a championship team right now. It's really frustrating because they have the talent. They're better than that. But they're just not showing it, man. They really aren't. And I still think they're eventually going to need help. Like, Brett Veach has got to make an acquisition on the D-line, man. Like, that's something that's not going to get fixed on its own. Like, they just don't have the talent. Like, they got to sign Olivier Vernon, Aldon Smith. Like, there's guys out there. Like, just go and get them. You need someone. But players like Patrick Mahomes, the players that what they're capable of, like, they have to play better. Like, players like that have to be held accountable. It's a frustrating stretch, man. Hopefully they bounce back next week against the Eagles, but we'll just have to see. I want you guys to let me know in the comments, though. Do you agree, disagree with anything I said, and what are your thoughts on the Chiefs right now? I would love to hear from you guys. But all that being said, make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Chiefs fans can find this. And make sure you check out my work on showmefootball.com as well as kckingdom.com. See ya.